Bobby Broyles and Tim McDonald here.
Should be a really interesting matchup. Buckle up. If you're not watching, you got some problems.
Happy Friday, CAA football fans. You know what to expect by now. He's Tim McDonald. I'm Bobby Broyles, here presenting 12 teams in 12 days, sponsored by Geico. Towson takes center stage today, coming off a solid 2015 season that saw the Tigers come up just short of reaching the FCS playoffs.
Despite coming up just short, and I'm one of those people, unbiasedly, that did argue that Towson should have made the playoffs. Only 4 losses, did win 7 games. Injuries hurt this team. The offensive line was impacted. Defensive backfield and the running backfield in general was impacted as well. I mean, Darius Victor is a guy who now in his 3rd year as a starter, an absolute stud, a guy who's almost the 3rd year is going to be asked to carry this offense again. He was banged up as well, had a bad ankle. But you can't look at that and you can't say, oh, well, what would have happened? I still think 2015 was a season for Towson that you have to take moving forward in a positive way. 5 offensive linemen are back for a team that averaged 23 points per game, 167 rush yards per game. You mentioned Darius Victor. I mean, you think about the depth in CAA football at running back. 9 of 10 guys last year who led the league in rushing are back, including Victor. You think of Victor when you think of a hard, bruising-style rushing attack. 1,021 yards, 15 touchdowns. That got him 2nd team All-CAA honors. Shows how much depth and how many quality running backs there are in this conference. I think, again, you have so many starters back for Towson, especially on offense. Quarterback position is going to be huge. Morgan Mahalik is an Oregon transfer. He's only going to be a redshirt sophomore. Don't know a lot about him. Hasn't played at Oregon. If he comes from Oregon, though, and a 4-star recruit, you have to expect that they're going to probably try to show him, get him out there, see what he can do. Heath Dahlgren is a guy who started the Rhode Island game last year. Ellis Knudsen. Connor Frazier last year didn't have a bad season, but at times the Towson offense passing game couldn't keep up with a rush attack, and we know Towson is such a better team when it's completely balanced up and down the list. Only 9 touchdowns passing last year, and 2 of those came from Dahlgren in that final game, so the quarterback position is going to be absolutely key. Obviously, when you have a guy like Victor, just keep feeding him the rock, and I know we've said that the last 2 years, but it's nothing new for Darius Victor in 2016. He knows what's expected of him. There's so many offensive linemen back in front of him. That's really the same group and the same cast. You look to him to start it on offense, and he knows that he now needs to take over the offense.
Absolutely. We caught up with Towson head coach Rob Ambrose at Media Day, and of course asked about running back Darius Victor. Take a listen.
Darius is extremely physical. I probably can't say that enough. He's the only player that I've ever been around, and I've coached some good ones, guys that played running back, they're playing the league, who you have to temper practice for him. Not that we don't want him getting hurt. He hurts other people, our own team. And I've never seen anything like that before. So his physical style of running is clearly just something different, something people just aren't used to. And having an offensive line with that much experience, that many guys that have started games, and they're not 17, 18 years old anymore. They're 20, 21 years old. And you and I were both different between 17 and 21, and so are they. So it's going to be a good year for him.
Towson just might have the most depth at linebacker in the conference and welcomes 8 total starters back this fall.
It's funny, you say that. You look at the list of returning starters, and you're like, linebacker. How many linebackers are playing on this team? But, I mean, Chris Tedder is a guy who kind of popped out of nowhere, a true freshman last year, made 55 tackles, was named the CAA Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. Jordan Minat, 11.5 tackles for loss. Malik Jackson, who we saw at CAA Football Media Day. Max Tejada. I mean, talk about all these guys returning. It's almost like the offense where you're really not replacing much. The mindset is still the same. And you think of Towson last year, and again, not to bring back that talk of missing the playoffs, but you lose at East Carolina, a really good game, 28-20. You lose at Elon in a game in the pouring rain, a tough CAA game to lose, especially to Elon. That was Elon's first CAA football win. You lose to JMU at home, and then you lose at William & Mary. So those losses, it's not as if they're bad losses. It's not as if the defense wasn't in those games. I think defensively, if you're Towson, it's that same bruising mentality. It's that same, we're going to hit you first type of mentality. A lot of guys are back, and we know Coach Ambrose, when we talked about him, what's going to change for Towson, there were so many younger guys last year who he anticipated redshirting or who he anticipated not starting right away, especially on defense, who are asked to come up and play right away. So those guys, another year under their belt heading into 2016. I think the defense only has way more room for improvement, which is scary to think about.
Yep, the experience can't hurt them, right?
Definitely not.
Once again, here is Coach Ambrose on a couple of guys on defense fans should keep an eye on.
Well, Chris Tedder was a freshman of the year as linebacker and had a good season, and I always keep my eye open for those guys and how they go in the offseason, whether or not they get the sophomore jinx, start getting full of themselves. And he's very humble, very hardworking kid. I don't see that happening. And a guy like Zane Upshur has had a great offseason. He's played a little bit and he's played well, but I think he's poised up front to have a really, really good year.
Coach Ambrose and the Tigers look to have a lot of veteran leadership and pieces together to make the playoffs in 2016. How's the schedule look in order for that to happen, Tim?
I actually do like this schedule. Extremely tough start, and we've said that a couple times during this series, but 3 of the first 4 games are on the road. You play South Florida, team out of the American that's a very good team, a team that is picked to win. And you play at Villanova and at Richmond. I mean, that first month of September is going to be telling, and it's going to show the Tigers what they're made of early on. But I do like the out-of-conference. A lot like last year, you have that tough FBS game, then you have 2 manageable non-conference foes. You play Dartmouth at Dartmouth this year. You play New Hampshire, which is kind of interesting. Dartmouth and New Hampshire back-to-back on October 15th and October 22nd. I do like the rest of the schedule, though. Elon at home, William & Mary at home, at Delaware. Stony Brook is also at home. But if you're Towson, I think I know Coach Ambrose has preached on it and talked about it last year. The chances that this team has, you think, well, what if they won this game? What if they made this game and made the playoffs? I think Towson got gypped. I think that just needs to end. There's the talk of missing the playoffs and the talk that what it can be. There's so many weapons back and so many guys back for Towson in 2016. I think it can only go up from here, especially, like I said, so many guys like a Darius Victor, who's been in the spotlight with Towson. He's been to the playoffs with Towson before. That's nothing new to him. I think it's all going to come around for Towson. It's strange. Can you call Towson a sleeper team in 2016? Can you say, watch out for Towson? Because they have been a good quality CAA football team the last 5 years at least. But it almost feels that way, like they can sneak up on a couple of foes this season.
The Tigers open their season on the road at South Florida out of the American Athletic Conference. That game can be seen live on Saturday, September the 3rd at 7 p.m. on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
Also, fans, we got a couple of Tiger players who we'd like to get to know yourself with our interviews we did at Media Day. You can check those out now on social media platforms and as well as on CAAfootball.com.
2 teams to go down the home stretch. We're taking the weekend off, though, Tim.
Yep.
Check back on Monday for a breakdown of Villanova as Andy Talley looks to end his career with the Wildcats on a high note. Have a great weekend.